I'm just going to try to explain what happened without violating anything that could bring people to my door. No real names, no real unit info. Just the facts as I live them. About 6 months ago, I was pulled from a NATO RRC rotation in Norway. Middle of nowhere. Nothing out of the ordinary. Regular drills, snow, boredom, you get the picture. One morning, I get pulled aside. No warning, no briefing. Just a guy with 2 straps above my CR saying, "You're being reassigned. Temporary." Temporary my ass. They moved me fast. Helicopter to Orland Air Base, alone. No other soldiers, no gear. Just me and the uniform I was wearing. At Orland, I got handed a single duffel bag. The contents were already packed for me. I got a new ID card and a different rank insignia too. It was Russian. No one explained a thing, and everyone avoided eye contact. I was told I'd be flying into Russian airspace under something called the NATO-Russian Coalition, which didn't make a damn lick of sense. The war in Ukraine is still very much active, and we don't exactly have the best relations with the Russians right now. Tensions were high. A fucking coalition. If that were real, it would be the front page of every paper in the world. But when I said that, the guy looked at me and said, "Some alliances are deeper than press releases." The plane from Orland to the Urals was big. It was a cargo jet, mostly empty. We had 2 pilots, 1 crate bolted to the floor, and me. The crate had Russian military stamps all over it. I don't speak the language fluently, but know a little bit here and there. I recognized the Cyrillic and saw this in stencil on the box. Later, I would learn that it means casualties permitted. I didn't sleep the whole flight. I kept thinking, am I a prisoner? Am I being traded? But no one cuffed me, no one pointed a gun. They fed me, they were polite, but no one would say why. I had been reassigned before, but never in this manner and never with this level of security. When we landed, it was snowing. There were thick, silent flakes coming down and settling onto the ground. We touched down on what looked like a private strip. There was no tower or hangars, just a half-buried concrete facility and 2 guys in grey uniforms with no patches waiting in a snowcat. They never said a word for me. They just motioned for me to come over. We drove for hours, straight into the mountains. By the time we stopped, it was dark and the wind had picked up. We arrived at what I can only describe as an outpost. Definitely not sophisticated enough to be considered a base. There were 6 prefab structures clustered into a circle. There was 1 central tower with some comms gear on top. The lights were dim, and power was intermittent. There were people there already. Some wore NATO colors. Others wore Russian. Some had no insignia at all. No one talked very much. Everyone looked tired and jumpy. I was shown to a bunk in what they called Block C. Inside were 2 others. One was an American like me. They were older, maybe late 40s, and had no rank displayed. The other was French and very quiet, always reading when I tried to talk to them. The American gave me a nod and said, "First time?" I said, "Yeah." He smiled. "Keep it that way." Over the next few days, I tried to figure out what we were doing here. No one gave any direct fucking orders. To go from rigid structure and clear guidelines on what was expected of me really fucked me up. Every day there would be a typed slip on the mess table with assignments. Patrol X, Repair Y, Inventory Z. The American, who I started calling North, since he had that kind of stereotypical American accent that comes from up north, told me not to ask questions. He said the less I knew, the longer I would be allowed to leave. He said allowed and not able. The weirdness crept in slowly. There was no phone service, no internet at all, which wasn't a massive surprise. But there were no outbound comms either. They had radio gear, but it only dialed to a few pre-programmed stations. Everyone kept logs by hand. Supplies came by helicopter once every 2 weeks. It was someone dropped off by NATO birds, and sometimes by Russian ones. One time, a Chinese chopper dropped off a container and left. No one mentioned it. That was certainly something new to me. We were told not to go beyond the perimeter. There were old trail markers in the snow, about 300 meters out from the outpost. Rusted poles with red cloth tied around the tops. Beyond that, according to North, was null zone. No patrols, no maps. At night, sometimes the wind carried strange noises, metallic pops, sometimes whistling or a sound like chains being dropped. One night, I swear I heard a woman laughing out in the trees, maybe 200 meters out. No lights, just laughter and then nothing. A few nights later, we heard a flare go up. Not ours. It was a red one. North and the French guy both froze. North stood up slow, walking to the weapons locker, and grabbed his sidearm. French guy just muttered, "Pas encore," or something like that. We weren't on duty, and no alarms went off to signal for us to do anything. But everyone at the outpost was awake in 10 minutes. Armed, quiet. No panic, but just grim silence. That night, we didn't sleep. No one did. The next morning, 3 bunks were empty. Just empty. No one talked about it. There was no roll call and no discussion. I asked North, "What happened to the others?" He just stared at me and said, "Next time you see a red flare, don't wait around." Then he walked away. I started keeping notes, not to publish or expose anything, but just so I wouldn't forget. Something about this place, it dulls your sense of time. Days blend together. The snow never stops. You eat, you patrol, you sleep, barely, and you stop asking questions because no one gives any answers, and there's no way to verify anything anyway. But that flare, it wasn't the last one, and the last one I saw was not red, it was green. And that is when things started getting really fucked up. You ever hear a sound so wrong that your brain doesn't register it at first, like a fire alarm going off in the middle of the woods? That is what the green flare felt like. We saw it just after 0300. It punched straight up into the sky, maybe a kilometer out, over the ridgeline east of the outpost. It was the only color that we were told nothing about. No one had ever said what green meant. We all just stood there watching it hang, that surreal emerald glow strobing across the snow. Then North, still half asleep and pulling on his boots, just muttered, "It started again." He didn't explain, he never did, but that night, something shifted, something snapped. The French guy was gone by morning. No one said goodbye, no one even asked. His bunk was made, boots gone, rifle left behind. I went to North and asked if he'd seen him. He didn't even look up from cleaning his pistol. He was too curious, he said. He didn't follow the rules. That was the first time I asked, "What rules?" North glanced up. He looked really tired. It was almost a pitying kind of look. You follow your assignment. You don't deviate. You don't go out alone. You don't ask questions. And if you see a green flare, you keep your fucking head down until someone tells you otherwise. I remember writing that line in my log. I underlined it twice. That notebook is long gone now. Never got a chance to bring it back with me, but the words are burned in. The next week after that was a blur, if it really was just a week. Like I said, time blended weirdly there, and it was hard to keep track. Assignments got weird. No more basic patrols or inventory. The slips now came folded and sealed. They were now typed in bad English and even worse Russian, from what little I knew anyway. One said, "Observe Echo Ridge, no contact, record only." Another said, "Remain inside after dusk, lights off, no fire." It's hard to recall all of the instructions specifically, so I'm just rattling off close to what I can recall. It's not all exact. That was the day we lost 2 more. A pair from the Russian side this time. They were gig guys who didn't talk too much. I'd seen one of them beat a radio into working with a wrench. Both were found just outside the perimeter. One had no face left. It was just fucking gone. I don't know how else to really put it. It wasn't torn off or melted or anything. It was just smooth skin from the nose up, like it was never there. I swear to God, that is what I saw, and I have no idea how to explain it to you without you thinking I'm a nutjob. The other. It looked like he had clawed out his own throat. I can't be sure he did it, but That was all the explanation we had. I have no idea what could drive a person to do that. To be able to undergo that amount of pain and trauma, and to be able to keep going with it. Those two visuals keep me awake most nights. North didn't even flinch when we zipped the bags. He just said, "Game's heating up. They're moving fast this round." I cornered him that night, and I made him finally tell me something. Staying in the dark like that was driving me insane. This is the gist of what he said to me. The outpost wasn't built by NATO. It wasn't Russian either. It was a hand-me-down, apparently a relic from some Cold War experiment no one admits happened, but I've obviously never been able to verify anything like this. Both sides found it abandoned back in 2004, after some kind of incident, but instead of raising it, they struck a deal. It was hush-hush and off the books. Since then, they've been using it as a kind of testing ground. Testing what? He either didn't know or wouldn't say, but I would wager he was just as in the dark as me. But what he did know is that people were rotated through in short cycles. No one stayed more than 6 weeks, except for North. He said he opted in. I didn't ask what that meant. He said the green flare meant escalation, that the perimeter was no longer safe. They like games, he said. Sometimes it's hunting, sometimes it's infiltration. We are test subjects. This whole thing has been running longer than you or I have even been alive. I asked who they were. He said, "You will know when you hear the knock." And he wasn't wrong. 3 nights later, there was a knock on the door of Block C. It was actually gentle, rhythmic almost, like someone tapping out a tune. No one moved. I had my sidearm under my pillow. North sat up, silent. We both waited. Then the knock came again, a little louder this time. Tap, tap, pause. Tap, tap, tap. North got up and quietly moved to the door. I whispered, "What are you doing?" He just raised a finger to his lips and mouthed, "Not for me." I didn't understand. Not until he opened the door. There was nobody there. Just snow and night. And something was on the ground. A radio handset. Old school. No markings. It started hissing. North picked it up and walked back in. The door stayed wide open. The hiss shifted to a voice. It was male, calm, heavily accented, but I couldn't quite pinpoint where the accent was from. Subject 6, confirm survival, observe final phase. Then static. North put the radio down and sat on the floor. He looked exhausted. "You were chosen," he said. "No backing out now." I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, the rest of the outpost was gone, literally gone. Buildings were flattened, gear was missing, no signs of struggle, no footprints. Just my block and the tower were all that was left. I ran to the tower. No one was up there. Then I ran to the mess. Empty. North didn't seem surprised. He sat in the snow, staring out at the tree line. "This is the part where you decide," he said. "Decide what?" He looked at me with cold eyes. "Whether you go looking or survive." I stayed. I didn't move for hours, just watched the ridgeline. I waited for another flare, for a sound, for anything. Eventually, a helicopter came. It had no markings, just like the one that had brought me. Looked like it could be an Mi-26, but honestly, I was too drained to even take proper notice. The pilot didn't speak. He just nodded and I climbed in. We flew low, never higher than the peaks. We didn't stop until we hit the Finnish border. When I was dropped off, my papers were different, my gear was replaced. I was debriefed by a pair of suits who never gave me any names. They told me I had been part of a joint training exercise that ended early due to weather. They showed me photos of places I'd never been and told me to sign forms saying I had. They told me I'd had mild amnesia due to exposure. They told me to forget about Block C. I did not argue. That was about a year ago now. I got out, sure, but it didn't really feel like freedom. Especially not when I had to make extra reports and was constantly assigned extra duties, which led to me being pulled aside and spoken to. It didn't feel like freedom when I had extra eyes on me at all times, even now. It's not as intense as at first, but fuck, it sure ain't fun. I'm not really sure what else is in store for me, but I just hope it isn't anything crazy, and I can get home safe, and maybe eventually leave the military. I'd prefer just to stay with my current unit, but who knows what the future holds. Any ideas what the fuck kind of shit I was involved in next? I know some military anons lurk here from time to time. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you do and you want to hear more, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment down below, as it lets the algorithm know that you like my content and it promotes it to more people. My goal for the channel is to hit 50,000 subscribers, and we're closing in fast, so thank you, and back to the stories. Get security contract to assist rangers in a deep forest. Shift is 6 PM to 5 AM. Pay is shit, but no interaction with normies, so it doesn't bother me. Get to drive a company car, and essentially get the whole forest to myself. Camping was forbidden at this forest. Job said to just report if you see any suspicious persons on site. Cameras are positioned at some parts of the forest, but would not be able to see any trespassers until notified by surveillance. Don't question it, and drive in circles for a few hours. No phone reception, so can't shitpost on 4chan. Was pissing it down by 8 PM, so visibility was essentially down to about 5 meters. Middle of summer, so it was a heavy jungle type rain that caused a lot of mist. About 2 AM. Mist rolling in like a motherfucker and can't see shit. For some reason, I don't seem to give a fuck about it and just keep driving. Start to see shiny eyes dotted on the sides of the road. Would catch the headlight of my car, but looked really low to the ground. Pull over because I want to see what the fuck it is. Starts to move in the middle of the road. Holy fuck. Start to realize I'm a fucking idiot, and my car is a lot further away than I realized. Doesn't move from the middle of the road. Run back to my car and lock the doors. Still there. Still happening. I put on my high beam lights and slowly roll forward towards the eyes. Looks like a small goblin-sized creature. Realize it's actually a fucking huge owl with its head crooked and turned towards me. Nope. Drive around it and haul ass. See more pairs of eyes on the road as I drive past. Crying in my car. Get to the entrance of the forest and calm myself down. Rest of the shift was okay. I've had multiple conversations with a retired attorney regarding an unusual case that he worked. With his permission, I'm sharing the details of the case, although he's asked me not to reveal his name for obvious reasons, so I will just refer to him as Michael. Michael has actually given me permission to mention that at the time of this incident, he had a private practice with several offices in Baltimore/Washington DC metro area. He also provided pro bono legal services for the state of Maryland, mainly representing clients with mental disabilities. Below is a statement that I took from him. Michael's statement. In June 1992, I was assigned a pro bono case/client who was being housed by court order in one of the state hospitals located in the metro Baltimore area. I interviewed the client at the state hospital facility. I informed him that he was facing a weapon possession charge. A vintage Marlin Derringer handgun and ammunition were found in his pants pocket, and other local vagrancy violations. The client told me that he went by the name Morris Winthrop. He stated that he was from New Jersey and lived most of his life in New York City. The file showed that there was no record of him residing in the state of Maryland. When arrested, Morris wore a high-collar white shirt and a brown frock coat and pants. I examined the clothes. Later I would discover that these were very similar to Victorian-era men's clothing from the 1870s to 1880s. He also possessed a silver metal case, similar to a cigarette case. Inside the case was a square piece of black-colored material that resembled hard plastic. He was allowed to retain this object while at the facility. Morris looked to be in his early 30s, though there was no hair or stubble on his face, just thin eyebrows. He had wispy blonde hair and a very pale complexion. The eyes were very deep blue, almost violet in color. During the interview, he would look directly at me and smile. He answered very few questions other than his name, that he was living in New York City, and that he didn't know how he arrived in Baltimore. The physician at the hospital stated that he may be suffering from shock and that there may be some memory loss too. I did not get that impression while in Morris's presence. It seemed to me that he knew exactly what was transpiring. To this day, I still do not know why I felt that way. At the end of the interview, I told him that he was being held at the facility under court order and that I would be seeking a hearing date. Morris's reply to me was, "Thank you for your service. I will contact you, I promise." The next day, I was contacted by the Baltimore County State Attorney's Office and informed that my services were no longer needed in this case. No further information was provided. I contacted the physician who was treating Morris. He stated that Morris was no longer at the facility. I asked where he was taken and was told that I would need to contact the state attorney's office. For almost 2 years, no official information was available in regards to Morris. Then, in 1994, I was approached by an attendant who had worked at the state hospital during Morris's brief stay. I was told that Morris had suddenly disappeared from the ward after his light meal. There was a thorough search conducted without results. Morris's clothes were retained by the state attorney's office. All other items, including the silver metal case, were missing. I have never found out where the weapon was stored, though I assume it is at the state police headquarters. At the time, I conducted a private search for Morris Winthrop. I hired a private investigator who found very little information other than that a single 32-year-old man named Morris Winthrop had resided in New York City in 1877 until he went missing without a trace. All his property in Manhattan had been left behind. The police found no evidence of foul play. After 19 years, I have never found another reference to Morris Winthrop. This has become a bit of an obsession for me. I have hired other private investigators over the years, but nothing has ever been found. I would have preferred more information, but Michael is quite wary of how others would interpret his investigation into Morris's identity and deposition. He asked me not to conduct a private inquiry. It seems his long-term investigation has ruffled the feathers of a few local and state officials over the years. I asked Michael what he thought of time travel as a possible explanation. He responded by musing, "If Morris was a time traveler, I wonder if he'll contact me as promised." At the time, I was 14 years old. Parents are super religious. They sent me to a Bible camp for a week. Honestly, pretty based. It's at a really nice cabin in the woods with other cabins located nearby. One had a really cool rec room. Lots of Christian cuties too, including one curly-haired chick who was crushing on me pretty hard. Feels good, man. Anyway, I like to get up really early and walk through the woods. Occasionally run into horny teens, cack. Last morning there, get up extra early and head to a nearby lake. They had fishing rods on site that they let us borrow. Fishing. 30 minutes later, it starts getting light out. I spot movement across the lake. Something moving through the trees really fucking fast. Can't make out the shape at first, but it's gotta be tall. Treetops are shaking as it moves. It's coming around the lake towards me. Nope. Reel in my line and fuck off back to the cabin. Hear the trees rustling loudly the whole time. Then the rustling stops. Glance back. The thing, whatever it is out in the open now, and I get a good look at it in the morning sun. All black, featureless, very slim, and tall, over 9 feet easily. It is standing on the trail behind me, not pursuing. It starts to shake really fast, then I hear a loud whistling, almost like when a bomb drops in a cartoon. Nearly trip and eat shit because I'm staring back at this thing. Run the rest of the way back. One of the camp staff members see me. "What's wrong?" I tell him what I saw. He just nods. "I believe you, Anon, but I don't think you should tell anyone about it. I doubt anyone else will believe you. It's your last day here. Just try to enjoy it." I take his advice and keep my mouth shut. Make out with curly hair at a huge bonfire later that night. Hear the same whistling as before coming from the trees. Don't care. My boner's in charge. Didn't ever see it again. First time telling my story since it happened 13 years ago. My dad doesn't really want to speak to me much about it. but I am just going to tell it how I remember it. When I was 13 years old, me and my father enjoyed driving on the gravel roads in the woods. Next to it was a small lake, but mostly wooden area, located in Jacksonville, Arkansas. When my dad would stop his truck, I would sometimes just go in the woods. Not too far from him, but just a good distance that I won't lose sight of him. Until that day, when I saw the black luggage in the woods. I remember I was happy for some reason, like I finally found treasure. I called my dad over, telling him come look at this. All I remember was we put the luggage in the back of the truck, went home, and had the luggage on the kitchen floor. My dad told me to put some gloves on. He slowly opened it. There was a pair of women's blue jeans with blood stains on the legs area. Little girl underwear. I can't remember the color, but it also had blood on it. A ripped up white shirt, and I will always remember the necklace. It was a silver disco ball, white diamonds pendant with a silver chain. I think I kept it for a while, but now it's lost. I remember the look on my dad's face when he told me to get black garbage bags. I don't know, maybe he thought we would get in trouble or something, but he was rushing, putting everything in the trash bag. He put the trash in the back of his truck and left. Until this day, I have been trying to look up online if any women have been missing in the Arkansas area with that close description. I brought this story up to my dad 3 years ago, and what he told me is that he came back to that area the next day while I was in school. He said a man in a white van came up to him and asked if he had seen a white woman around there. Apparently, the guy said she had been missing for 2 days at that time. I don't know why he didn't tell him about the luggage, but my dad just said, "No, I'm sorry." I actually have a story from my trip to the AT a few years back. I don't know if it's necessarily creepy, but we were spooked and curious at the same time. B20, 4 years ago. Me and 3 friends decided to go hike the AT in North Georgia, Blood Mountain if you know where that is. We get there, hike for a couple of days until we find a really steep switchback. One of my friends and I are pretty in shape and go ahead of everyone else in the switchback. Fuck my life.jpg all the way up. God, that thing sucked. I end up making it to the top around an hour later. Look down. My other friends are climbing at various heights. I sit on a rock and get my water bottle while I wait for them. Not paying much attention. 5 minutes pass and my first friend gets to the top. We're both pretty tired, so we just sit there. We notice that there is basically no sounds, not even animals or wind moving through the trees. That is when I heard it. Bump, 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 bump. A dull thudding sound, following a rhythmic pattern of dropping a heavy rubber ball on the ground, like the time between each thud is halved. Wait for a minute or two. It happens again, and again. We wait for our 2 other friends to catch up. They get to the top, and we tell them to shut the fuck up. They hear it too. We take a break and try to come up with any theory as to what it could be. To this day, we don't know what it was. It was a sound that you could feel as much as you could hear it. It was like the mountain we were on was bumping under us, but the sound sounded like it came from everywhere around us. Since it was something I heard and felt at the same time, it's hard to attach a sound to, but if I had to give you an example, it would be like feeling someone's heartbeat through your body, or if you're at a loud concert and you can feel and hear the beat of the kick drum. I don't know. It kinda gives me chills to think about.